Hello and welcome back to another episode of CamBro Conversations. Today's conversation, I am joined by Willard, who is the head coach at Built by Me and a content creator on Instagram, YouTube, and her blog. Ellen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you, Elle. And we were laughing when we first met in person that from social media, there's probably a few different things that we know that Elle or Built by Elle loves and spends her time doing. But getting to know you over the course of the couple of days that we spent at the factory weight shoot, there's so much more than meets the eye when it comes to social profile. And I think sometimes longer form conversations and podcasts have the ability to do that. And that's why I was so keen to share this with my audience, but also your own.
100%. I am definitely aware of how much of my life I don't show on social media. And we all know the saying, social media is a highlight reel. I completely stand by that. I'm sure you do as well. But I maybe not intentionally, but I try to maybe not show parts of my life or all of my life, because I'm aware of the fact that maybe when people follow me, they quote unquote maybe signed up for the type of content that they were expecting from me, which is me training, me lifting heavy weights, giving the occasional educational insight into how to do XYZ. But other than that, I'm happy with just leaving my page as very fitness related content, and I don't really need to sway away from that. Like, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Of course. And it's nice to have different outlets though, and I think in person's is one of those, but equally you've got your blog, and I know your writing is something that's really important to you, and we will absolutely be covering that during this podcast, because you are generally somebody that writes really well. You're very articulate, you're very reasoned, and it's like long flowing things that you can't really get away with on Instagram if you want to reach people with the message that you do on Instagram, which is for women primarily to really focus on getting stronger and focusing on performance and becoming the best versions of themselves, and supplementing that with written conversations, and hopefully in the future more and more of these podcast conversations that you can get involved in would probably give your audience just that extra dimension to you, which I know is there.
100%. And I think there is so much more to me than what I show on social media. And I do sometimes take a step back and think, I really wish that people saw a bit more of the person that I want to show. And it's not that I'm, putting on a facade or pretending to be somebody that I'm not. It's just I'm consciously making an effort to maybe not show every single side to me, because there is the option to engage, as you said, in other platforms. I have a blog that's there. I mean, given I don't post all of my written content because I am my own biggest critic in that sense, but there are other outlets that people can go to if they are maybe invested into me as an individual. Like, I've done a couple of podcasts prior to this one as well, but I actually love speaking and I love just engaging in conversation with people. And I think every person that you meet is going to get a different side to you, but in a good way.
Yeah, such a powerful message. And I guess my first question for you, Elle, would be, how did an unfortunate injury lead to you getting to where you are now?
Oh, so the injury, I feel like everybody at some point has been injured in some type of way, but I have grown up in an environment that a lot of my family have been very active. That led to me being very active my entire life growing up. And I'm very fortunate for that. I've dabbled in pretty much every sport imaginable, from ballet to swimming to track and field to almost everything, some on a national level, some on just like recreational purposes. But I think I was about 15, 16, so I'm 23 now, just turned 23. I'm getting old. But about 7 to 8 years ago, I was playing rugby and I actually tore my right kneecap. And I think from that moment onwards, I had never felt fulfilled within what I was doing, because I looked to kind of team sport and exercise as being my outlet. I very much preach that same message now that I'm in the place I'm at, where I'm very confident within what I do. I see it as my form of therapy. Obviously, when you're at that young age, you don't view it like that. You just view it, this is where I see my friends. I'm pretty good at what I do as well. it's just a bit of fun. But when that happened, it put me out of sport for like a good amount of time, in the sense that more the mindset side of things. So the recovery for my knee, it still plays up every now and again here, but I don't let it stop me from doing my training, from getting involved within sporting events and stuff. But it definitely, the mindset side of things was the biggest battle for me, because the recovery in itself was probably about 6 months. I was in a cast. I then had the mechanical leg, whatever it's called. And yeah, the mindset side was definitely the hardest, getting back to it, because it was, right, what I love has been taken away from me. My confidence has dropped. My mindset has just completely gone out of the window. I have little motivation to get back into sport. And then eventually I got back into things like netball, basketball, but I'd never felt good enough. I never felt kind of back at that same level that I was before it happened. And again, going back to, I'm very self-critical of everything that I do. I think it's a good thing, but it definitely comes with its flaws as well. But I never felt like I was ever back to the same level that I was before that. And I think it was more so confidence and actual ability. But fast forward to college, I was completely inactive. I actually did PE at school, at college, and little physical, actual, like the physical side of things was involved within my PE sessions at college. So to me, that was music to my ears at the time, which I never thought I'd say, because I'd always relied on sport as being an outlet. But it was actually, there would be some sessions where they'd say, right, we're going to be a bit more physical. And I would literally I'd pretend to write a note, being my mum, saying, look, she can't take part, and blame it on the injury still. Like, I'd still use that as an excuse, because I thought my physical performance wasn't at the level that it needed to be.
Elle, that makes me so surprised, based on the person that we see nowadays, but also the period preceding that, where your family and yourself place such an importance on activity and doing well. And for you to get this injury and this knock in your confidence, maybe in terms of like getting injured again, or even like your ability to perform at a level that you felt proud of, because we're probably going to get onto that P word that way as this conversation goes, and being proud. But for you to like shy away from things because of where your mindset is with regards to physical performance, and maybe like your like ability to withstand hard physical performance, is such a shift change from where you are now and where you were even before that.
100%. And it's definitely fitness that has shaped me into what I can proudly say being the confident woman that I am now. And throughout those kind of there was a period in college where my mental health was awful. And there was one comment made by a guy who went to the college, and he literally called me fat. And at this point, I was tiny in comparison to what I am now. Like, I didn't have as much muscle back then. I didn't probably have not as much fat either. Like, I was literally tiny. If you were to put my two bodies next to each other, you'd be like, excuse me. But he called me fat. It really got to me. And that was kind of the thing, I guess, that ignited me to find a way of getting back into fitness, because that comment, clearly I had a lot going on mentally as well. I was not confident within my body. I had quite a poor relationship with nutrition as well. Or I just wasn't educated within nutrition either. But I got back into the gym, and as with most females, I started off with segregating myself within a little room within the gym, using fixed barbells. So I think the heaviest they went up to was about 45 kilos. So I'd usually go for about the 30 kilo, not too challenging, but also wasn't like very, very easy at that point. And I just use that for lunge, Bulgarian split squat, hip thrust, normal squats. I'd do about 8 exercises. And then I'd go on the treadmill and do some sprints. And that was my sessions pretty much all of the time, because I had such a fear of getting really big, really muscly. But I found myself kind of not being fulfilled, because I knew that I had the potential to be stronger. And even still within that first year of my training, I lacked a lot of confidence. And I think it's just because there was no meaning or purpose to what I was doing, which then leads to zero fulfillment within what you do as well, because it offers no enjoyment.
There's so many ways we can go with that, El, but I would want to go back to this lack of confidence. And then like sometimes we can think of like our stressors and our emotions as like a cup of coffee or a cup of water. And when extra things get poured in, it eventually overflows. And one of the events that occurred that caused an overflow for you emotionally was that thoughtless comment that somebody made about your body type and your weight. And it's caused like a bit of a eruption, and it's caused some upset. But you then took, albeit positive action off the back of something that was a really negative comment, but it maybe started for you to think again, like, I am a fit person, I'm a healthy person, and I'm going to hopefully start to explore that domain of your life again, albeit you were doing like a very written and scientific led PE degree. That's a challenge, isn't it, in a course? But you then get the option to start to be physical outside of that and push yourself again.
100%. I think it wasn't obviously the comment, as you said, it was just kind of the element that made the cup overflow, because there was still all of those parts of me, you know, lacking confidence, never feeling as though I was good enough, not really seeing any potential in myself, no desire to pursue any type of career, I guess, at that point. I just lacked a lot of passion within what I was doing. And obviously, yes, that comment then spurred me on to say, do you know what? Maybe there's some truth to what he was saying, because of my poor mindset at that point. So although maybe not the best reason to start getting back into exercise, a very powerful one that obviously still remains to me to this day, because you don't forget little comments like that affected you in such a way. And although, yes, very little comment, and if somebody, I mean, I get people now saying it to me, and it's so easy for me to brush off now, and I'm very grateful that I'm at that position. But even within my first year of training, that mindset was still so like such a negative headspace, because I think, again, it comes back down to kind of purpose and fulfillment with what you're doing and lack of passion. And when I do something, I want to be able to put 110% into everything that I do. So when I then started a gym, a PT at another gym, because what I do is I do lower body at one gym because I felt really confident there, and then I do upper body at this other gym that I started at. So I eventually started to like transition over into moving gyms, and there was a PT at this other gym, and he was like, oh, you should try like barbell back squats. And during that time he was like, you're so strong, like all you need to do is change a few things. And I was like, well, throughout college, again, when we did maybe have those physical sessions, I vividly remember there was a lat pull down, and it had a seated row option on the machine. Yeah, attachment on the machine where you could lower it down. And the guys stacked it, because my class was literally me, two other girls, and then all guys. And the guys stacked it to the bottom weight, and they were all like trying to pull it, or like some of them got it, some of them didn't. And I was like, I'll give it a go. And they were probably like, you won't do it. I kid you not, I've just yanked it towards me and like, oh, that's not even hard. And I still remember that to this day, because I've always felt that being so athletic my whole life, I've had a lot of potential to, you know, genetically, I've built up this inner strength, both physical and mental, which I just needed to find again, because I just lost it. I'd lost it along the way. I'd lost, again, that passion for a lot of things. And I think as well, that was such an important part of my college experience, was that moment in the gym where I was like, damn, I'm stronger than a lot of the guys in here. And I used that and ran with it.
It takes a lot for you to be in a headspace now where you can identify these moments as things that have shaped you further down the line. And we will touch on self-awareness and how you've developed that as we go. But for me, it's great that you've identified these moments. And maybe one of the third such moments that we've already discussed just now briefly is finding a bit of a mentor figure that you could trust to push you outside the comfort zone, remove you from the studio with the pre-made barbell, and take you out into this other area of the gym where you could barbell squat and leg press and really explore this genetic physical potential which you so clearly have?
100%. And he was probably, I'm so grateful to this day, because he became more than just that mentor figure. He actually became a really good friend of mine. And as I said, I'm still so grateful that he came into my life, because he educated me a lot about training. And he was probably the first insight I had to building muscle as a female, because he was the first person that actually kind of showed me that it was okay and I should actually go into the gym, look to get like stronger, look to get healthier, and especially if that was what I enjoyed, because he could see that that's what gave me the most fulfillment. Because I'd come out of doing a barbell back squat, I'd be like, oh wow, yeah, let's go heavier. And obviously there's an element of ego lifting back then, zero progressive overload in what you're doing, you're just always trying to go heavier every single session. But he definitely was that kind of first insight into, do you know what, it wouldn't be so bad if I actually got into kind of getting a hell of a lot stronger and focusing a bit more on performance as opposed to just the aesthetic side of things.
Who were your influences in that first year then, when you were doing the treadmill sprints and the pre-made barbell lunges and circuits?
So it was definitely, they all look the same. So you've kind of got like the Tammy Hembros, the Kayla Itzines, the Katia Least Henrys, females that I knew I was never going to look like, because my thighs were already a hell of a lot more developed from being so athletic my entire life, were a hell of a lot more developed from just my upbringing than what theirs were present day. You know, they had the really kind of lifted glutes, tight little waists, no muscle on their arms, which amazing. Like if that's what they enjoy, if that's how they supposedly train, go for it. But you know, you'd look to Instagram and be like, oh, this HIIT workout that's going to tone my inner thighs, yes, I'll do that today. And I actually bought Tammy Hembro's guide off of Depop for 50p. I think the original was like £60. But it honestly would literally be about 7-8 leg exercises, all kind of 3 sets, 12 to 15 reps, because, you know, higher reps was supposedly meant to quote unquote tone your thighs better than lower reps. And I'd follow these girls and then expect kind of my results to be the same without having any education on, right, no, nutrition really counts. And all of these other factors, like the females who are posting these workouts probably aren't even doing them themselves. So it's kind of comes back to what you see online, take it with a pinch of salt, because people are showing you what you want to see. And a lot of the time that's what's fashionable on social media at the time.
It's what they hope the algorithm will respond to, because people, like, it's a lot easier to maybe save that workout and do that workout than it is to watch you squat something genuinely really heavy with all the different technical complexities and the mindset needed to get underneath that barbell. And that's where the challenge lies. And that's where we'll absolutely talk about your coaching, Elle, and some of the other fantastic influences that you started to respect as the years went on. But at that initial stage, you can see why many young females in particular find these influencers quite alluring, because it is they're like quote unquote body goals in modern society for some women. And what they're selling, a £60 guide or 50p if you shop around on Depop, like that, is quite attractive. It's quite alluring. And unfortunately, a lot of people fall into that trap, and it takes a really strong personality for both yourself, but also maybe the mentor or the coach or the figure that you find to move you away from that and give you an idea of what is actually possible for your body within your own genetic potential, rather than that of some Instagram supermodel who has those proportions quite naturally.
100%. And I think you hit the nail on the head in that. I think sometimes as well, we do what we think we have to do, or is of expected of us. And for a lot of young impressionable females, and the word impressionable, I don't like it in a sense, because I think it can be somewhat, I don't know, like
Condescending.
I don't know. Yeah, condescending. Exactly the word I was looking for. I think it can be somewhat condescending when you say it, but it definitely is relevant to a lot of young females who are online. I just feel as though the age of people coming to social media is getting lower and lower and lower because they have access to all of this technology within their early years. And it's quite worrying when you think about it, because you are what you consume. And that's when you then have to be careful with the type of people that you do follow online. And, you know, for most people, they are very uneducated, not a fault of their own. You know, you are when you're younger, but you come onto social media and you look to these people who maybe other people have mentioned, or you think that you have to look that way because that's just constantly what you're seeing. So it's all about as well who you choose to follow online, which you're in control of completely, which I think is what we forget. We think we have to follow certain people, and we have to kind of present ourselves in a certain way, but in reality you're completely in control of what you consume and what you show.
Agreed. And how did this start to change over time then, away from your kind of traditional fitness influencers that are showing you these short, sharp hit workouts with sprints in the treadmill and toning certain parts of your body and that sort of, albeit scientifically entirely incorrect information, but very glamorous and very attractive, to the journey that you've gone on to get to where you are now?
Definitely this mentor figure that I had, who kind of took me through a lot of what I did in my early years within training. You know, I'm really somebody who wants to do a lot of learning outside of maybe conversations that I've had with people. So he might have briefly mentioned an individual on social media. I've then taken a mental note of that name, gone home, searched them up, and been like, oh, wow, that's really frigging awesome, like what this person's doing. And at the time, it was people who like Simeon Panda, Obi Vincent, like a lot more males within the industry, because I feel like at that point, there weren't as many females who, I guess, of course there were, but females who were maybe had as big of a presence on social media. Because I still think at that point I looked to maybe people who had hundreds of thousands of followers, because you think that follower count then comes with like a reputable opinion and like amount of professionalism. And so I would take these names and do my own research outside of that, follow them, and be like, oh, well, he's following them, I should probably follow him as well, because they're clearly talking some sense. I mean, look at them. And whilst now these figures and inspirations to me may have changed, I mean, Obi is still incredible in my eyes. He's definitely somebody I look up to now from like a work ethic point of view, and just as an athlete. But I definitely think the mentor figure that I had, him giving me just like, again, another insight into, look to these really strong individuals, male or female, look what they're doing. Do you not think that's really awesome? And I was like, do you know what, it is?
Yeah, that's true inspiration, isn't it? And that's available online if we go in the right spaces. But equally, my initial thought there straight away is that it's gone from like that extreme of like the kind of perfectly toned, presented female fitness influencer to like the bodybuilders and the guys throwing around heavy weight and like looking absolutely incredible. And it sometimes takes to go towards that extreme to somehow come back and find where you want to be on this kind of spectrum between content. And the extreme, fairly positive message that the guys are sending there about lifting and putting on muscle and getting stronger, you almost needed to go to that end of things to understand I can do that, and then find where L sits within that in real life.
100%. Like, you almost view it as a spectrum, and you've got one end and then the other end, and it's just like finding maybe where you fit. And the beauty of fitness is that, yes, whilst you might fit within a certain position on that spectrum at one point, you always have the power to go in whatever direction you choose. And I think that's something as well in which this mentor figure taught me, because he was like, you can do whatever you want, like you can come to the gym and train however you want. Because he then started getting into kind of the CrossFit scene, and at that moment in time it wasn't for me. I didn't understand it. I was like, no, why would I do cardio and weights? That's not what I want right now. I just want to get hella strong. Cardio is going to make me weak. And again, a lack of understanding, but it's finding the position in which you fit at that time and what you enjoy.
If we're talking about finding your position on social media from a consumption perspective, I'd be really interested to hear about how you've started to establish yourself now as probably that female voice that you needed when you were younger to guide you in the right direction. So how did you start to build yourself on social media over the years? How did that get started, and where are we today?
I think I went down a very quote unquote traditional route, as a lot of females coming into the fitness industry do. So, you know, you start off with sharing your transformation photos, you start off with showing and exposing a little bit more of yourself than maybe you'd like today. And don't get me wrong, so let's say, for example, I still work with a company called Lounge Underwear, so it does kind of require me to be a little bit more vulnerable online with what I do show. But back then it wasn't for the reasons of which I'm proud of to say I am now. Like, the message and kind of the intent behind it wasn't there. That's what was lacking. And you know, people then start asking questions, so people start becoming a little bit invested within your life, and then depending on what the answers are, they then choose to stay, or they're then like, oh, maybe she's not for me. And I think I was very much like, oh, here's this workout, do this to look like this, like do this. I think at one point, it might still be on my page, I'm not really sure. I actually quite like keeping old things on my page because it shows like a sense of progression within how you train, your education as well. But there was one, and it was like 5 exercises, and it was a HIIT workout, and it was honestly like shoulder taps, a lot of ab stuff, jumping lunges, things that I would just not do now paired together. And I was like, do this really sweaty HIIT workout. And people were somewhat invested because they thought, oh, if I do this, I'll look like her. So I think I've definitely followed that route of, you know, kind of monkey see, monkey do, and expecting people to have that same view with me. And then it's not been until the last couple of years where I've said, do you know what? Me saying, do this workout gives 0 value because it doesn't come with the right intention. And I think definitely, you know, gaining my PT qualification, training people in person. I've got a business mentor now as well who has helped so much with my self-development. And just having these insights into different parts of the fitness industry has then shaped me to the content I produce now, in which I'm very proud of. Who knows, in 5 years' time, I might be like, what are you doing? As with anything, because we grow and evolve. But I think having that business mentor there as well. And for me, following people online who actually served me value and served me education was what I think was the biggest contributor to my own change in what I wanted to kind of put out.
Yeah, so analyzing what you were seeing and then framing that in your own individual output is really valuable. And again, leads into that self-awareness piece where you've got a good understanding of, yes, I maybe played to the gallery a little bit in my early days, but equally, I think if we were to look at your statistics, your growth has come when you've been the most settled, clear, like comfortable version of yourself. And people, like you say, you were saying at the start, it's that Ron Seal approach, what it says in the 10 in terms of heavy lifting, female empowerment, and clear insight into your training journey and your nutrition and what you do with that. That's what people get when they sign up to your page, and that's why it's grown so much. Obviously, because you're exceptional at communicating that, but also because it's very clear that that's your values and what you're wanting to put into the world.
100%. And I think people are a lot smarter than what we think. So maybe back then when I was posting this content, there might have been people viewing it and saying, she's not doing that. And I think, I don't know if it's just because I do have very good self-awareness, but I definitely feel as though I can pick out people who I see as being very authentic online and being very true to themselves. I'd like to categorize myself as being amongst those people as well, but I think people are a lot smarter than what we think, and people will genuinely buy into you when you show that authenticity. So unless people are really good actors online, which I definitely think that there are a lot, people buy into, again, that authenticity and your life. And you only, like, from my captions as well, I write some really long captions sometimes on my posts, and if people want to read it, that's why it's there. But a lot of the time I don't actually do it for everybody else. I am very aware that I get a lot of DMs of people saying, do you know what, thank you, like, thank you for sharing that side of you, thank you for being vulnerable, because it really helps me, and I absolutely love that. But a lot of the time it is literally just word vomit from what's going around in my head on the day as well. Or maybe I've had a negative thought in the gym, or maybe I've had a little tantrum when something's not gone my way, and it's like, do you know what, let's just put pen to paper, or, you know, fingers to phone, and type it all out. Let's do a little bit of like a word dump, and it might offer some type of value, even if it's to one person or if it's to 1,000 people. Then then amazing.
I think that's so valuable, and that's true vulnerability, rather than playing the game of trying to be authentic and acting, as you said. And I think a large part of your self-awareness probably comes from your ability to word dump either on a page, whether that's when you're journaling, which I know you're a proponent of, but also when it comes to like sharing that on social media. Like, quite a good way to learn something or make sense of something yourself is to teach or share it with others, and your process of doing that is clearly something that's important. On the journaling piece, is that something that you've done a lot of away from social media, where you maybe articulate your thoughts on paper?
Yeah, so growing up, as much as I love and adore my family, they're a very good support system for me, and I'm very grateful that I have them. We're very close and have been my entire life, but we're not talkers, we're not big talkers, we don't communicate our feelings. You know, I've always been kind of brought up with the mentality of get over it. If something bad happens, you get over it, you suck it up, you don't let yourself dwell or sit within your own negative mindset. And for me, that always then meant that without realizing, I had to have some type of outlet. I've always been kind of that person who, whether it be with myself or with other people, I've been a big talker, which I know for a lot of people is very hard to let themselves feel vulnerable. But even from such a young age, I've had a journal, and it's not been something I've written in every single day, but I can't remember the exact age. I think it's as young as like 4 or 5 or 6, something between those years. I've always had a diary where I've said, you know what, like, I've actually done Dear Diary, and then written out a whole kind of insight into my day, what happened, why I'm upset. You know, back then, God knows what it said, but I've carried that over into now adult life, where I religiously will kind of put down my thoughts, put down my intentions, try to start my day off in a positive way. So every day in my diary, I write a quote. I write it in red pen. So all of my other writing in my diary is done with black pen, and this quote is done with red pen, just so it stands out. I can refer back to it. And sometimes you just need that little positive prompt in your mind to say, do you know what? This is how our way of thinking should be today. And I've always tried to have an outlet, and a lot of that is then shown through my writing as well, the writing I do choose to share. And that's definitely developed my own self-awareness, because I have always been kind of somebody who breaks everything down and that analyzes it and then reflects on everything as well.
Peak performers and the people that we look up to and the people that we think have an idea of what they want to do and an awareness of who they want to be and who they are, it leaves clues very often. And one of those clues quite often is the ability to write out what's going on inside this top 4 or 5 inches of your head, depending on how big your forehead is, like mine. It's very important that we have an awareness of what's going on. And by sharing that with the paper, or by sharing that on a social media post, we start to make sense of it. And that's why when you and I speak, you verbalize really well what's going on. And when you speak to your friends, you're probably one of those friends that people know where they're at, because you're able to articulate it. Whereas a lot of people who maybe shy away from writing things on paper or have never built that habit. And it doesn't need to be daily. You and I are enjoying it daily more often than not. But your ability to do that is hopefully an insight to anyone listening to understand maybe why, when you listen to you speak and us have this conversation, that you're quite aware of where you've been and where you're going and what's happened on that journey and what's been going on inside your head throughout that period.
100%. It is such an amazing trait to have if you're able to reflect and you're able to have any type of self-awareness. And I think everybody is capable of having it. It's just whether you want to allow yourself to give time to it, because it's not something that you don't build a habit in a day. And I think I have just been incredibly, I guess, I don't know if lucky would be the word, but that's how I choose to describe it. I guess I've been kind of lucky that it's something that I always got bought journals and diaries when I was younger. So maybe my parents are like, oh, that's her outlet. We're not massive talkers. We don't talk about our emotions. Give her a diary and see if she uses it. And I've still got all of those diaries in my house. They're in a box within a cupboard. So I do occasionally, if I'm having kind of a day where I just want to reminisce, I will go through some of those. And it's kind of nice to see that growth within myself and the ability that I do have to kind of verbalize and articulate what I am thinking and feeling.
I really like that, I really like that. Speaking of your writing, you've written before that social media is both your biggest dream and your worst nightmare combined. For you, what are the pros and the cons?
Oh, such a deep way of saying it, isn't it? But so the pros, don't get me wrong, 100% has been the community side of things, the ability to be able to connect, even if it means that it's not a direct connection. So like right now we're talking, even if it's just connection through, you read somebody's post, you listen to somebody speaking on a story and you feel some type of, you compare yourself to them in a positive light maybe and say, do you know what, I can really relate to that. Like there's an element of relatability. So that form of connection, and then also all of the opportunities that have come with now working with brands, going to events, going to especially fitness events. I went to an event on Friday, which was absolutely incredible. Sometimes just thinking about it, it generally gets me very emotional and overwhelmed, because I'm just like, how have I got to here? How have I got to this position where I get to go to these events with a load of other really inspirational people, inspirational fit people as well. And that's definitely the biggest pro. It is that element of connection with other people. Even just when we met at the factory weights shoot, it was just incredible to spend a day with people who we're probably quite like-minded in a sense, but also we can share a range of other, share and talk about a range of other topics as well. But the cons, I definitely then think, is pressure. And that's not necessarily pressure from anybody else, but the pressure I put on myself to maybe uphold and maintain a particular image. So going back to what we said at the start, I like to kind of keep it within the fitness realm and moving into kind of like the mindset side that comes with fitness, body confidence, self-awareness. But it's the pressure I put on myself as well with things like the algorithm. Obviously, everybody always talks about the algorithm and, it's doing me dirty. It's not serving me purpose. But it would be like if I did something with a brand and maybe the post didn't do as well, I've put that expectation on myself and said, oh no, I've let these people down. I've let myself down because there's not been as much engagement in its interaction as maybe they thought they were buying into. And most of the time with brands, they're very understanding of, ads don't do that well sometimes on Instagram or whatever social media platform. And usually 9 times out of 10, they're like, it's fine, it's expected, but there's still that kind of internal pressure coming from myself to say, you need to do better.
You place a lot of pressure on yourself when it comes to your own performance, but equally your social media is like an extension of that. So it getting X number of thousand impressions less than a normal post, of course you feel a wee bit like, oh God, I wish I had done better than that, because I want to do really well for that brand, because there's a reason they're on my page, because I use their products and I care about them. And the social media person that I deal with there and the owner that I deal with there is so lovely, and I want their products to reach the right audience. So I think again, it's one of those cons that's it's a healthy con because it shows how much you care about what you do.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think as well, it comes down to reputation and wanting to maintain reputation, especially with like my business. And you mentioned about the pressure side of things. That pressure is something that's felt not only within my own performance and how I show up every day, but also within, you know, the relationships I have with friends, with family, with my partner, with then my work as well. And like you say, like it can be a very healthy pressure. There are definitely times where I do find myself being a bit more kind of towards like a negative mindset of this isn't good enough. So I'm still even like everybody's constantly learning about themselves, and it's still something that I'm trying to learn with, trying to find that really healthy balance. I don't think I'm ever going to get to the point of perfection. Nobody is, but it's always going to be a learning journey.
Undoubtedly. One of the the cons actually that you and I spoke about was actually safety, and this surprised me. I hadn't considered this as much, albeit my account's considerably smaller than your own, but I hadn't quite thought of that, and that it actually alarmed me. But I think it's an important thing for people to understand when it comes to the extent of the reach that you get. There are certain considerations that you need to make when it comes to looking after your own well-being, Elle.
100%. And I think as well, that's why I maybe don't show as much on social media as sometimes I'd like to, because I'd like people to see the side of me that then comes out within, you know, podcasts or even just everyday conversations with people that I connect with. But that's why I'm very careful with what I do post, because I've had it before where maybe I've been within a particular area of London. For example, I went to a gym in Putney, and I've posted that on my story instantly, and I've had somebody say, oh, I'm only half an hour out from Putney, like I'll come down and I'm like, this is insane. And you don't think about it, and the safety part is a big like alarm going off in my head a lot of the time with how present I then am at these events that I go to, and what I do post, what I don't post. And sometimes as well, I feel like there's a lot of pressure when maybe you're at an event, people might be like, oh, make sure you're posted on your story, and I'm like, I'm actually not 100% comfortable with doing that right now, but I will when I leave. And it's learning to, I guess, respect that, because I've had it before in the past as well, where I've had like, you know, as unfortunate as it is, like threats from people, which has then carried over to the safety and well-being of my family, which is again why I've not then been as open to showing my family online.
I think the location aspect of things is something that people wouldn't think twice about, but given you reach a larger amount of people than many people, it opens you up to certain areas of the population that there could be somebody rogue in there that would travel to come and see you, and that would be very, very uncomfortable and potentially dangerous. So that was something that when you and I were talking about, like the hotel that you were staying in and the gyms that we were using for the shoot, you were like, I try and be like very mindful of like after the event, I can share what I've been up to and what I've been doing. And equally, you mentioned the P word, presence. We're mentioning lots of P words, aren't we? Presence and purpose and what was the other one? I'll get back to it. Pride. That was it. Yeah, we love a bit of pride, don't we? So when it comes to your presence at events, I was really impressed, and it's something that I try and like hold myself up to as well, that when I'm with people, that I'm not consumed by creating and posting on socials all the time, and instead I take the time to enjoy the moment. And you and I were laughing that sometimes you feel that you almost go the like too extreme on that, and that surprised me. I think you get it right.
Really, I think, for example, I went to a workshop yesterday and I got my phone out a handful of times, but I just get so kind of involved and immersed within what I'm doing that I don't then always think, oh, I've got to make sure I capture this. And a lot of the time at events like that, there are maybe professional photographers who are going to be kind of snapping pictures anyway, but it's then like you go on social media afterwards and you see all of these stories being posted. I'm like, oh wow, it looks like I wasn't even there at the time because I've not given an insight into that. And sometimes I think I need to find a little bit of a better balance, because I really do pride myself in being quite a present person, especially if it's with kind of, for example, the factory weights event that we went to, and just the meal that we went to the night before. Phones away or face down on the table, no distractions. I don't want to see notifications coming through to my phone because I'm going to get distracted by them. But I think as well, you have to remember that you're going to get a lot more from engaging within where you're at in the present, within kind of posting it online and then getting engagement from people online who in reality don't mean a lot, but they're not going to give you kind of that same connection that you're going to get from the people that you're with at that time.
Yeah, there's a big reason that you and I got on so well. It's because we weren't living vicariously through our phones and hoping that we would get lots of likes or story replies or whatever else. Instead, we were just interested in finding out about each other and the people that were with us at that moment in time. Before we put a full pin in social media, you've written a lot about this a way that hasn't been published yet. Do you want to share a little bit with the listeners about what that process has been like for you?
Yeah, so I actually have like a book almost like ready and raring to go. Manuscripts done, has been semi sent off to my management. They've then said, do you know what? Publishers are going to be so interested in this. Can we have a sample chapter? And I just close off. I'm like, no, you can't. That's my writing. And I'm really protective over it, because again, it's kind of another element of vulnerability that maybe I'm not ready to share yet. I think I make myself and allow myself to be very vulnerable sometimes within captions, previously within blog posts. I'd love to get back into doing a little bit more of like a scheduled blog post on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, or some type of maybe daily email or email list. I'd love to do that and just share a little bit more about that writer in me. But I don't think I'm ready to allow myself to be vulnerable to share what I've actually put a lot of work into just yet. And again, it comes back to being a little bit of a perfectionist and putting a lot of pressure on myself and expecting great things from what I do.
That may come one day, and I think it's a journey, it's a process, it's something that you might, next draft, maybe you'll be, okay, I think I'm ready to release this. Or maybe something else happens that informs you that you think, oh, okay, well, I've had validation or recognition in this space. Now I'm ready to share something in this. And the next area I'd love to talk about with you, Elle, is with regards to your coaching career. And I know that given your platform, you've had some different models that you've used over the years to deliver this service. But what have you learned from having these two different models?
Yeah, so I've kind of gone the opposite direction of what most people online do, most online coaches. So I went straight headfirst into kind of the scaling side of my business, the algorithm-based system, which is intended to grow to kind of the thousands, the tens of thousands of clients. And I've done that. I was very successful in that, I think. And that was kind of my first year and a half of coaching online. But what that did come with was a lack of fulfillment within my actual job, because I felt as though I was a bit more of an admin assistant, just answering emails, having kind of no input into the programming side of things, having no input into kind of building relationships and connections with people, which is what I thrive off of. And again, I kind of grew some type of resentment towards what I was doing. And going back to having a business mentor, I've been with him for maybe a year now, maybe even over a year now. And we spoke about it because I only moved to the one-to-one coaching of summer last year. So actual serious one-to-one, not kind of I market it as personalized programming, but I'm actually having no input into what you're getting, which is what the previous system was basically marketing itself as. It was, this is a personalized program, but it doesn't then say, based on all of the data that you've input, this algorithm is going to just push out a program to you, which I've had no say in. And where I'm at now, after speaking to this business mentor who I really kind of look up to, he said, what are you doing? Like, what if it's serving you zero purpose and fulfillment? Surely that's not something that you want to take pride in within what you're doing and your work. And I actually got back into doing gym floor work, so actually working as a PT again, building connection, and actually having regular clients coming to see me. And it was I was just in my element. I absolutely love it. I love learning about individuals and what people are capable of, and every single client that comes to you is going to be so different from the last. And I just moved completely into kind of the opposite direction of, do you know what? I'm not going to work with hundreds of people at one time and then not know their names. I'm going to work with a much smaller group of people and learn every single thing about them, what makes them, their lifestyle, how they move, what they thrive off of, what drives intrinsic feedback for them. And that, for the past over a year now, has brought me so much joy and happiness that I absolutely love my job.
Fiscally, a step backwards for this period, but in terms of your happiness and the ability for you to have longevity in this space, undoubtedly the correct decision, because you couldn't have kept going down that route and been as happy as you are now. Otherwise, you would have just kept going, and perhaps the number of clients would have gone up, and the bank balance accordingly. But you wouldn't have been happy with your day to day. You would have been dreading work and answering emails and whatever else. And there's definitely a price tag when it comes to someone's enjoyment of what they spend the vast majority of their life doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I spent thousands of pounds on this system as well. And I almost thought I was doing myself a disservice by not seeing it through, because I was like, you've spent so much money on this. Why are you just giving up? And I think that's where my mindset then comes back to, like, kind of the pressure and seeing myself, like, if I don't see something through, I get really annoyed at myself. But it wasn't even about that. It was about, you are genuinely starting to resent your job. You are going to become a little bit of a facade online, because you're going to be pushing, you know, join Built by Me, join this community of women, all with the same aim of getting stronger. And internally, I'm not then still living by that same message, because I'm waking up and not enjoying what I'm doing when I'm sitting on my laptop.
Yeah, I'm going to use another P word. It's about your principles, and you're clearly somebody that tries to live by those, and it's not ultimately just about like size of business. It's more about the impact and its impact on you as well. And I remember you saying to me that, like, when you had this huge client roster, somebody tagged you in their story, like doing deadlifts or whatever, like, all coached by Built by Elle, and you were like, I don't know who that is. And that's so far away from what you actually want, where you want that connection, that rapport with the client, and really be invested in their journey.
Exactly. And it's little, I feel as though throughout my life, I have these really kind of pinnacle moments and things I can refer back to, you know, like the seated row in the gym where I saw I was really strong, like the comment that was made, like that story where I was like, wow, I don't know who this girl is. And to me, I was like, you're doing yourself a disservice now. You're not doing the money that you've invested a disservice. You're doing yourself. And that to me is a lot more important than the pay packet that's coming in at the end of the month. And again, I think it comes down to your intention with the type of impact that you want to leave on the industry that you're in. And I know for me, a lot more than just how much money I make. You know, when you look at kind of all of the really successful coaches online, amazing that they're doing this and they're reaching so many people, and I really respect that. And, you know, maybe one day when I don't feel like being a coach anymore, it could be a route that I go down. But for now, I get a lot more out of actually building connection with people with a smaller pay packet and actually leaving an impact on people's lives in a different way.
Yeah, no, I again, I really respect that, Elle. Next question from me is, what drove the decision to follow a vegan diet? Was that something that happened before you became really invested in your fitness, or when did that occur?
No, so I've been vegan for just over 2.5 years, coming up to 3 years, I want to say. And It was really, I went cold turkey with it. So I know some people have been, so I said cold turkey the other day, going a bit off tangent, and somebody turned around and was like, you should say cold tofu. And I was like, what? I've never heard that before.
It's really difficult, Elle, when people change the goalposts for language. And I think
Yeah.
we all need to have sympathy and empathy for people when they use a term that's no longer deemed acceptable, or I don't want to use the word woke, but woke enough. And it's really
Yeah.
difficult because we're all trying our best, and you weren't using cold turkey to try and be offensive to people that don't eat meat.
No.
As somebody yourself who doesn't eat meat,
Yeah.
it's difficult.
I
We'd all get cancelled if we weren't perfect, weren't we?
I know. And I was just like, I'm sorry, what? I've not heard that before. But no, so yeah, I went cold turkey with it. A couple of my friends were veggie or pescatarian, and I think like most people, I was just very naive to kind of what went on within kind of the farming industry, what went on within kind of animal agriculture in itself. And you are like, I think for a lot of people, unless you read into it and do your own research, you are just going to remain naive. And I have no problem with that whatsoever, because I was that exact same person, but I actively chose to seek a little bit more education and a little bit more learning. And that was a choice that I'm happy that I did, because now I can stand by kind of where my ethics and morals lie today, which is I'm proud to say that I am vegan and I don't eat animal products. But it's not the same for everybody. And I actually watched a documentary called The Land of Hope and Glory, which in my opinion is one of the best ones. You know, obviously you've got things like The Game Changers, What the Health, documentaries that, don't get me wrong, I think are maybe a nice insight in a sense, but I think they have a lot of elements of kind of scaremongering and propaganda type traits. But Land of Hope and Glory, again, might be seen as a bit more kind of propaganda within veganism, but it honestly blew my mind that I was like, I could never eat an animal product again. It was just so inhumane. And I think from there I was just like, right, let's do this research, let's see what this veganism is all about. I didn't even go vegetarian. I was just like, right, no, I'm vegan. And don't get me wrong, I've definitely slipped up along the way. Not even slipped up, because it's normal to just make mistakes, but it's things that trip you up, like egg powder or semi-skim powder, and sometimes the lining of a B12 supplement is made from some type of animal product. And it's just like little things like that you don't think about. And I think a lot of people, when they go vegan, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect. And it's just like, no, it's about contribution. It's about doing what you can do instead of trying to be an all or nothing person.
Yeah, and given you've made that decision from an ethical perspective and you're very clear on your reasons why, and it's very like set in your mind about what the fundamentals are behind your decision, I wanted to ask more about the practical element as well. And you mentioned one of the things that I'd love to learn about, which is with regards to supplementation to support somebody like yourself who's optimizing gym performance, chasing like peak of physical human strength. What are some of the considerations that vegan trainees like yourself have to have?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't go vegan for any health aspect at all, because I'm very aware that you can live a very healthy and probably, I can't lie, easier lifestyle with eating animal products, because you don't have to have as much thought within what you do eat, your supplementation, especially if you are into your fitness on a level that demands that extra 5% like supplements, which is where I feel like I'm at now. Because yes, I might be ticking all the other boxes, you know, sleep, managing stress, hydration, but what's going to get me that extra 5%, which considerations to kind of take in are supplementation such as things like B12, omega, calcium, things that are usually found within animal products, even things like creatine, which is one of the most like researched supplements within the fitness industry to actually be proven to have its benefits. And when turning vegan, I didn't really think about them at first. I just carried on taking the supplements that I was taking without thinking. And then you don't realize that, you know, no, that B12 was actually derived from an animal product. So Usually you can get things like B12 in normal foods, like some fortified breakfast cereals, but again, you have to look within where that B12 was derived from. Omegas, which obviously are usually found within like fatty fish, you can get from things like seeds, nuts, plant oils, and then like calcium, which obviously is usually found within like dairy products. You can get from things like soy milk, leafy greens, but the amount that you actually need, I would definitely just say having that contingency of let's just take a supplement just to make sure is easier than kind of me stressing. I want to live kind of a very low maintenance life when it comes to thinking about every single thing that I'm eating. And don't get me wrong, nutrition is such an important part if you're really into fitness and depending on what level that you're at. But having that contingency of I'm just going to take my supplements today really does help.
Yeah, fantastic. And as part of that, what about when it comes to nutrition? Because the big headline is always, oh, how can you get your protein in? And I know that you of course will have an answer for that.
So that at first was such a challenge because some vegan protein powders, the content within them is not as high as say like a whey powder. And you're not just, so if you were to have a whey powder, you might be getting something like 20 to 25 gram of protein per scoop. And then there's like no carbs, no fat. But with a vegan one, sometimes you then got some type of carb content, some type of fat content because of where it comes from. And I really do rely on the clear shakes from My Protein, the vegan ones. Like I have literally one every single day. It's convenient. It actually tastes really nice as well, which is a really important part of what I do consume on a daily basis. But even just making small swaps from, say, you know, your regular white pasta might have something like 6 to 7 grams per serving. If you were to switch that out and go with kind of a red lentil or soybean pasta, it might then end up having anything from 22 to 25 gram per serving. So little swaps like that, which then don't make any difference to your life apart from there might be a slight change in texture, but nothing that's too harmful, has made the world of difference, because then it's kind of forced me to, yes, be a little bit more adventurous with my food, but I don't have to spend maybe at the start what I was doing at the start, which was an extra half an hour kind of researching what do I have to eat, how can I get protein, especially with how important training is to me.
Yeah, and the other challenges around that, the quality of the protein, isn't it? Like that whole amino acid profile. And I know that sometimes you have meals that you go to which achieve that structure for you, El.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that's an argument for a lot of people, is like the full amino acid profile. And some items such as like quinoa, buckwheat, soy, seitan, they actually have like a full amino profile. But it's having things such as like, if you're to have a pita, that might be lacking, because I think wheat lacks in lysine, I want to say. So having something like that and then pair it with hummus, which then has the lysine that you need, you've got that pairing. It's going to give you kind of that full amino acid profile that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's that ability to understand what is available when you change the vegan diet, or if you're somebody that does like meat free Monday or whatever else, if you're trying to lower your meat intake, understanding that it can be achieved and just how to do that is so important now.
100%. I think, you know, there's so much easily accessible free information out there. It's just a case of kind of trying to pick through what is actually legit and then what is just a load of rubbish.
Exactly. Speaking of picking through information that's a load of rubbish, one of the topics that you and I spoke about was investing when we were together. And that's not something that you've talked loads and loads about on social. Obviously, you've talked to me about the platform that you use, but there's lots of rubbish information out there when it comes to investing. But how did you get investing interested at such a young age?
So my partner actually was the one that kind of like struck that interest within my mindset to say, do you know what? Don't just let your money sit in your bank. Like if you have kind of the ability to invest it, you know, I started off investing something like £5 to £10, and now obviously that's built up over time. You don't have to always start big. Like you can start really small and eventually that's going to compound. But it was my partner that actually kind of got me into the investing world, and it was actually Free Trade, which is a platform I'm still on to this day, is such a good platform for young investors because it's so kind of user friendly. It's not too complicated. Their referral scheme is amazing. And even just sharing the referral scheme, like the referral link on my story, I've had it before where I've then had kind of like 50, I think at one point I had like 50 plus people use the same link. And it was like, all they need to do is now put £1 into their account and I get 50 free shares. And that share could be anything from £5 to £200 in terms of value. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's insane. And it's platforms like that which make kind of the investing route a lot more, I guess, enjoyable in a sense. Like I find it very interesting, and then aligning kind of companies that I choose to invest with within my own values and morals as an individual, for example, being eco-friendly, and kind of trying to align then who I do invest to with that has been a really interesting process.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about you taking that potential pay cut, moving your different coaching platform, your awareness to make the most of your money that you are getting and investing and trying to get 10% return or whatever else is really valuable, and it's why you're going to end up in a better fiscal position while also happy is like an amazing balance to strike.
100%. And I'm not doing it for short-term gain. Don't get me wrong, there's been the odd occasion where I've been like, right, let's capitalize off of something that's happened to the moon and all that stuff. But a lot of what I do choose to invest is long-term, and it's, I'm thinking about the future. Don't actually have any form of pension at the moment, and I know that Free Trade have like a pension scheme, which again, capital at risk. I'm not a financial advisor, but if you're willing to be aware that capital is at risk, a lot of the time they do end up paying off if you are in it for the long haul.
Yeah, there's lots of low risk relative return options for us to explore, and the more people in our age demographic and with our profile speak about these things, the more people are willing to explore financial literacy, because we spoke about a lack of education understanding when it comes to fitness and nutrition and your journey initially. So it's probably even worse when it comes to financial literacy because nobody in school has any idea on these things.
It is awful that we don't get taught about how to actually, like, little things, like even getting a mortgage. I know that goes off of tangent from, a house is an investment at the end of the day, but it's little things like that where you're just like, I have no clue what I'm doing. But again, it comes back down to kind of utilizing the resources that you do have around you, because everybody has, well, I'd say everybody, if you're privileged enough to be in a position where you have access to the internet, you have access to all of this free information that if you're willing to put time into, you're eventually going to get some type of profitable gain back.
Yeah, and I think it's irresponsible of us not to utilize the information available to us, to try and put ourselves in a better financial position when we're older. And it's great to see you not only doing it yourself, but also sharing that with others. And it's another side to you that traditionally, if you looked at your socials, you wouldn't be expected to speak about as much.
No, not at all. Apart from kind of, I think I've actually got a highlight on my Instagram page, which goes into kind of my investments. But other than that, I think I'm very aware of the fact that a lot of people don't follow me for that reason. So if they are then interested in it, I actually did an interview with the Telegraph about investing for young people, and it ended up popping up on a lot of people's Snapchat. So, on the Snapchat, they have like the news articles, and it was just my face. I was literally the headline, and it was my face saying like young investors. And I was like, oh, wow. And I got so many people sharing that, sharing that with me, screenshotting it and saying, you're on my Snapchat. And then they've said, they actually had a read and they're like, what is this Free Trade about? And I think people do develop some level of intrigue if you plant the seed. So just me having that kind of like little element of planting the seed, people have then kind of invested within, oh, maybe she's talking some sense.
Yes, exactly. So just whetting their appetite a little bit and then encouraging them to use easy to use platforms, get some free information, do some research. It's all positive in my opinion. And the last thing to ask you, Elle, is where should people head towards if they want to carry on the conversation with you?
So we have at built_by_L on Instagram. I try to be as kind of engaging with DMs as possible, but it can get a little bit overwhelming sometimes. But we then also have Beauty by Elle on YouTube. Given the branding has not remained consistent throughout all social media platforms yet, Google only allows you to change your name a certain amount of times. And then we have www.builtbymecoaching.com.
Perfect, Elle. All three of those will be linked in the show notes below. I know you guys will love that conversation. So my favorite task of you is take a screenshot, pop it on your Instagram story, tag me at call.cambro, tag Elle, and I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.